In the 2024 Jeep Grand Cherokee L, the journey from point A to point B isn't such a rush. In fact, with 3 rows of spacious comfort, thoughtfully crafted luxurious design, and an available premium Macintosh audio system, you'll find yourself seeking out the scenic route more often, even if it's just another lap around the block. Jeep, there's only one. Visit Jeep.com to learn more. Jeep is a registered trademark of FCA US LLC.
Hey everyone, welcome to Hogwarts, a podcast. Hey everyone, welcome to another episode of Hogwarts, a podcast. We are covering Chapter 27, The Lightning-Struck Tower. Elizabeth and Julie are with us again.
Hi everyone.
Hey guys.
So this is another loaded chapter that takes place in essentially one location.
Yeah, nothing really happens.
Nothing really happens.
You might want to get a tissue box ready.
It's really boring, actually, and this is only going to be a 5-minute episode, I'm sure.
I mean, we're pretty much done. Dan, wrap it up.
Oh, should we just wrap it up?
Yeah.
So everyone, give us a like on our... No, there is actually stuff to talk about. So
if you insist.
I guess. We're having fun, guys. We're having fun. It's good times. We're wrapping up pretty close to the end of Half-Blood Prince, unbelievably enough. So we're getting down to it, and like I think I said it on the last episode, where usually we get the roller coaster ride. This is just like from 0 to like 150 out of nowhere, I feel like. But here we are. The Lightning-Struck Tower, which, if you remember, is the card that Trelawney pulled not too long ago, like 2 chapters ago.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Which, when you think about it time-wise, it was like less than 12 hours ago, less than 6 hours ago. It really wasn't that long ago.
We don't know how long they were at the cave, but several hours to maybe like a half day worth of, I presume she's been pulling that for a while, and that's part of the reports that she's been trying to give Dumbledore of like, danger! And he's like, yeah.
Sure, you've been right. Twice.
We had a whole thing about that.
Whole thing. Anyway, this chapter, The Lightning-Struck Tower, features, obviously, the return to Hogsmeade and Hogwarts Castle. Then we get, I guess, a couple of events happening at the Astronomy Tower, which we'll get into.
Do you think Harry could use this apparition as a, like, look, I can pass my test. I did it successfully. License, please.
I don't think he can actually tell anyone that he was out with
Can you
Dumbledore.
imagine going to the Ministry of Magic and being like, so, I can't tell you all the details, but one time I was at a place with a person that we all know, but I can't give you the name, and I did this with them. But they didn't do it. I did it, but I can't tell you about it, and they can't tell you about it, but I did it. So please sign my license. I'm Harry Potter, by the way. Please sign here.
You should have led with Harry Potter.
Stamp approved.
Yeah. So, I still think it's a miracle that Harry was able to get Albus back. Like, just wading through the water to get there, and then him being able to apparate for the first time, not for the first time, but for the first time across a vast distance, well with someone else.
Especially since they said so much deliberation has to be used to do it successfully, and all the things he just went through in the cave.
And that's a mistake I think he made. Because he's like, oh, destination. Then he picks Hogsmeade. Not the Hog's Head, not the 3 broomsticks.
Well, why would he pick the Hog's Head?
That's where they left from.
They didn't even get to the Hog's Head.
It was like an alley next to the Hog's Head.
They're on their way. It was like, we're past the 3
Still,
broomsticks.
you gotta pick a destination, not a generalized city.
I will say, it's actually shocking, though, that Harry had that much confidence Because I feel like Harry isn't really a super, like, we got this, let's go. He's like, we have to do this, let's go.
I don't know.
I feel like it's shocking that Harry's like, yeah, I could totally do this. I could do both of us. We could both die.
Dumbledore would just be like, well, splinch the bad hand at least.
See, I was more picturing like half his beard just disappeared.
Oh, that'd be terrible. The buckle off of his boots that I still haven't let go from like the first book. Anyway, so I still think it's a miracle they even got back. When they get back to Hogsmeade, Albus right out the gate was like, I need Severus. I need Professor Snape. And Harry's like, yeah, I'll get Pomfrey. And he's like, no, I need Severus. Yes, Madam Pomfrey, hospital wing, got you. No.
I think it makes sense, though, because between Snape's knowledge of potions, he would probably know better what the potion was and the antidote, taking out any, like, order business that you wouldn't want Pomfrey to necessarily know.
1,000%.
Like,
yeah.
The fact that Harry's like, no, hospital wing, where she mainly deals with tiny cuts and small magical problems.
I think it's more of a anti-Snape thought than it is a pro-Pomfrey thought, although Pomfrey is very capable in her own right. But Albus is very strict on that he wants Snape. And Rosmerta comes out of the Three Broomsticks and is like, what are you two doing, and what is that? Haven't you seen that behind me? That's kind of a problem. And they both look up and they see the dark mark is set above Hogwarts. And this is where Harry uses one of Julie's favorite spells. And to get...
I busted out laughing rereading this part because it's so sassy, too. In my opinion, anyway.
Rosmerta's like, oh, I can go get the brooms. And Albus is like, Harry can do it.
Harry's got this,
I just think it's so funny because at first reading it, I was like, oh, Dumbledore is saying, like, Harry, go get him. And Harry does the summoning charm, and I'm like, Dumbledore is like, this kid has been itching for a successful summoning charm. Let me tell you, Harry's got this.
I just like the specification that it's Rosmerta's brooms and not just like Accio brooms. No, it's Rosmerta's brooms. I don't want anyone else's.
Harry's really showing off. He couldn't get that Horcrux, so he's like, I will get the exact brooms that she was
gonna get like
about.
50 brooms from all over Hogsmeade.
And they'll be able to fly into Hogwarts.
He probably could have gotten a better broom, too. Like,
It's going to be like a whole fort of brooms built over them.
Accio brooms. Take your pick. Which one would you like?
They will take off on the brooms back towards Hogwarts, where Rosmerta is supposed to go and alert the Ministry of Magic. And then, as they're flying on the brooms, which, again, Albus severely weakened here, not doing great, able to fly on a broom, though. Mm-hmm. And stunningly well, all things considered. He ends up beating Harry back to Hogwarts.
Well, Harry said, like, the dark mark seems to have stimulated him to, like, wake up and become more alert.
Like an adrenaline rush.
Yeah.
But he does notice that Albus, while on broom and getting closer to Hogwarts, is undoing the enchantments that he himself has put on the grounds so that they could fly into Hogwarts at a speed.
Do you think this is enchantments that he purposely set, or are these enchantments that Hogwarts naturally has that only the headmaster is allowed to undo? This,
I think, is upgraded security.
I think it's just the Hogwarts enchantments.
Debate!
I think the better debate is, when did these enchantments go up? Post book 3 or post book 5?
See, because I was reading them similar to Julia. These are just Hogwarts enchantments that always exist. And then, like, the headmaster has to be the one to undo them.
My guess is that it's whatever that protection spell is, gets passed down to the headmaster, and they can break it in case of... Because how frequently would you need to break something like that?
Right.
So I think it's newer because I think there are some things that are in place, like the apparition bit. However, there's been canon usage of that even that's questionable. And canon usage, I'm saying, because of the Fantastic Beasts movies. If you want to interpret that as canon, then that's fine. That's whatever. Anyway. But we obviously see Hogwarts go through some security upgrades through Harry's time there. They upgrade it in book 3 with Julie's favorite mass murderer, Sirius Black. And then we get upgrades for the Triwizard Tournament. We get upgrades for book 5 and post book 5. So I feel like it's just an upgrade in security.
I hate that I'm going to say this, Dan. I think you might be right.
Boom!
Only because...
I'm definitely clipping that.
Only because back in book 1 with Norbert the Dragon, Charlie and his fellow dragon teamers fly in and out on broomsticks.
Harry and Ron get there through a flying car that crashes into a Whomping Willow.
Well, I mean, I guess that too, but I'm thinking specifically with brooms. But I'm thinking specifically with the brooms themselves. Well, maybe that went up after the car.
Harry knows that by undoing it, it means they don't have to slow down, that they're like speeding towards the castle. So
maybe it's something that slows your approach.
I don't know. I just thought it was interesting.
I interpreted that as just like, we're not stopping to break a spell and then continue on. We're on the move doing it. But yeah. Anyway, they get to the astronomy tower. And again, Albus refrains, please get Severus. Go get Severus. Talk to no one. Don't remove your cloak. Do nothing else. Get me Severus Snape.
And Harry's already being like, is this mark legitimate or not? Because I don't see any bodies. Do you see any bodies? I don't see any bodies. Like,
but you're also in the astronomy tower, so I don't know how much you would see the bodies if they're in the castle.
Well, they assume since it's set over the astronomy tower that something happened in the astronomy tower.
And Dumbledore did make the point, like, they might not know in the castle yet that something has happened. It could have been that they set the mark first and then they go kill. Yeah.
Or they're doing it to literally lure you to the astronomy tower, which Harry eventually agrees, begrudgingly, to go get Severus Snape. He goes to reach for the door to the astronomy tower, but he hears people running up the stairwell, and then hears the words Expelliarmus as the door opens, but feels petrified. Albus is disarmed as he petrifies Harry. Good evening, Draco.
Can we talk about the fact that Draco used the exact spell that Harry seems to have, patented by this point?
I actually have a note about that because Harry thinks Expelliarmus is not a freezing charm when he gets frozen. That's his first thought, is, wait a minute, this isn't a freezing charm.
I know this spell.
Literally, my first thought was Harry would know. This kid should just write a book about the uses of Expelliarmus and how it can save your life, because that and the summoning charm are the only two charms that Harry ever uses.
He
Can
is
it be
very
summoned or disarmed?
He is very good at those two, though.
All I could think was him being like, "It's not a freezing charm. Weird."
If you heard one thing and then something else happens to you, you would also be very confused.
But it's just that charm in particular, of all the things that J.K. Rowling could have used. You could have done something to knock Dumbledore off his feet and then he drops the wand or something. But the fact that it's Expelliarmus.
Do you think Malfoy...
Harry's that's not a freezing charm. He's going to write a book. He's not going to be famous for being Harry Potter, the boy who lived. He's going to be famous for writing a book of the added uses of Expelliarmus.
1,001 uses of Expelliarmus.
Do you think Malfoy went to Expelliarmus because he's heard the Death Eaters and Voldemort complains much about how often Harry uses it?
This kid.
This charm again. And he just takes our wands.
Joking aside, it's effective. It disarms Albus Dumbledore.
It's a hugely important moment.
Yeah.
Which we'll get more into later, but...
So it leaves Albus very much in a vulnerable state. He already was, because he's already super, super weakened from the potion and the events in the cave. So not having a wand, he's in rough shape here. And then we get into a whole discussion that he has with Draco.
I like that Draco's not dumb, though. Right away he sees that there's 2 brooms, and he's like, wait, who else is here? It's not just you. Mm-hmm. I don't know if everyone would have noticed that.
And it's also smart for Albus. I mean, Albus is just smart in general, but it's smart for Albus to immediately defer. Don't
pay attention to that.
Don't pay attention Vision of the man behind the curtain.
I summoned 2 brooms on my way up here.
Again, Harry's under the cloak, petrified at this point.
Right.
So he is, like, literally, you can't see him, can't hear him, can't whatever. So they have a conversation, and it's essentially centering around how Draco found a way to get Death Eaters into the school. Albus goes, it's actually pretty ingenious. Well done. I didn't expect Death Eaters to be able to enter the castle. I thought I put protections around this that are pretty solid. Draco eventually gets into how he did it with the vanishing cabinet and learning about it last year with Montague disappearing and how he formulated the idea of, this could actually be really useful. It all comes down to Draco has Albus Dumbledore cornered, and his goal, his job set to him by Tom Riddle, Voldy himself, is to kill Albus Dumbledore. But, as Albus says, Draco, you're not a killer. Albus then goes into his literal attempt after attempt to kill him that failed epically. And
Which Draco is shocked that Dumbledore put 2 and 2 together, that, yes, you were the one who had been attempting to kill me this entire year. Mm-hmm. So it's kind of funny because it's like Dumbledore talks like, I've been watching your progress with your homework. You've been doing really good. That's great. But to be fair to you and your previous points and the previous arguments we've had, he does have a little more shock than I remember that he was successful with getting the Death Eaters into the castle.
As opposed to the insults that Albus threw Harry's way last chapter of you are insignificant. Albus does throw a couple of compliments Draco's way. Like, hey, this was really ingenious. This was smart. I
didn't think it was possible.
I didn't think it was possible. You pulled something off that I thought impossible. And he kind of feels himself a little bit, and he's like, Snape is going to wake tomorrow and realize, like, he's not Voldy's favorite anymore. I'm going to supplant him. My family's going to be safe again. Yeah. Mm-hmm. And, Albus kind of considers that for a second, and before he gets into his pitch, I'm going to call it Albus's pitch to Draco. Albus does realize, like, wait a second, how'd you even get Katie and Horace the respective things, the necklace and the poison mead? And he's like, you put the Imperious Curse on Rosmerta. I see it now. Like he really had some gaps in. He knew maybe 80%.
Well, I have a theory that Dumbledore knows more than he lets on to Draco, because I think that Dumbledore is also stalling right now.
Oh, he's definitely stalling.
Like, he's stalling, and I want to talk about him stalling more in spoilers because I can't remember when a certain point happens, and I don't want to spoil something. But, like, he's antagonizing Draco, but also complimenting him and clearly delaying what he already knows is the inevitable. And I don't necessarily know that Dumbledore is as shocked with all of these things as he pretends to be, in my opinion, pretending. Because it all comes to him pretty quickly when he's like, well, and how did you do that? I know how you did it. And it's one of the things that, I mean, I've talked about watching Criminal Minds before on this podcast, but it's one of the things that, like, you find, like, in any of the police shows, that you find out when you're talking to someone who, the villain, so to speak, that it's if you compliment them, if you stroke their ego, like, they're more likely to be like, you're right, I am great. Tell me more. Instead of immediately, stabbing you.
It also keeps them calm, too. Yeah. And Dumbledore doesn't need Malfoy to just, like, go off the handle and come at him. Yeah. So, let's talk about how did you communicate with Rosmerta. Which I do want to take a second. He said he used the coins, the enchanted coins, and he got that idea from the DA, from Hermione. Mm-hmm. Hermione got so much praise last year for being able to accomplish that magic. Draco just did that, too. Like, we don't necessarily think all the time about how skilled Draco is as a wizard, but clearly he also has some skills.
He might not have done the magic. He could have taken a coin.
That the DA had?
Yeah. Maybe it was...
Or copied one. He could have taken one and copied it, but either way, he'd have to then
be able
program
to
it.
do that magic onto it. I thought maybe Snape would have done it for him, but if Snape had done it, then Dumbledore would have known about it.
They didn't have a great relationship this year.
Yeah, so I don't know if he had done the same spell that Hermione had done. That I feel it was Ernie who was so impressed by it, right? Like just shows.
I agree. I think Draco is heavily underrated through this book, and part of that is because
we don't see him as much.
Well, J.K. kind of buries the lead here. I mean, Draco is the antagonist from the get in like early chapters, but he's not in this book at all until like the last 10.
It's like the opposite of what she usually does, where like with Ginny, when Ginny's the one who's opening the Chamber of Secrets, suddenly we go from nothing to Ginny is everywhere. Notice Ginny's reaction to this situation. Ginny me down the hall.
Well, it's now Pettigrew as Scabbers.
Yeah,
Scabbers was another one.
To Scabbers now. So now it's I don't want you to pay attention because he's the one doing it.
Don't pay attention to Draco over here. Yeah. This is happening. Yeah. All the relationship stuff is happening. Lavender is happening. Yeah. Don't pay attention to this student.
Although to be fair, I feel like we never really see Draco's magical skills all that much.
That's why there's so much Draco fan fiction in the world. Like people will literally follow.
So much of the Draco fan fiction is because Tom Felton, right?
A lot of that, but it's because he's portraying the character in such a good way.
Yeah.
So a lot of it is a fascination with Draco because you don't get a lot of him, and he's talented and he is charming in his own right, and there's a lot to the character of Draco Malfoy that we really just barely, and Jen is a big proponent of that too, of just barely scratching.
Spoilers.
Well, and I feel like his magic, other than like in potions where Snape is like, "You're a Slytherin, I love you," it just say like, okay, he does magic, everyone else does magic. Huzzah.
Yeah.
So it's like you never really know if he's talented or not.
I mean, so just in this, we learn that he disarms Albus Dumbledore, and I don't care what the circumstances are, that's still a mighty accomplishment. Number 2, we learned that he's successfully Imperiused an adult wizard in Rosmerta, and he's used that to inflict damage upon other individuals multiple times. 3, we also learn he's obviously been able to repair a magical object essentially by himself, at least as far as we know, by himself.
Which I'm still trying to figure out how he fixed that, because it's not like there's a ton of those vanishing cabinets around, and like, how do you figure out how to fix that without, slicing off your arm by accident?
Yeah. When we even gave Draco his flowers at the beginning of this conversation, then you dig deeper and you're like, wait, he did this. Well,
to add on to that list, I mean, he's so resourceful and flexible. Like, we saw how he used the Polyjuice potion that he wasn't expecting to have. We said how he overheard Hermione talking about how Filch wouldn't recognize potions from poisons, and was like, okay, I'll try that one. Like, he's not
dumb. He's not a dumb character.
As much as possible to accomplish his task.
Almost entirely on his own, because not only he doesn't want Snape to take the glory, but I can't imagine when...
He doesn't want anybody to take the glory.
Well, and when Voldemort's telling you, like, you are doing this or your whole family dies, and knowing Voldemort, like, can you give me that coin? Or, like, hey, can you put the Imperius curse on her for me? Like, now all of a sudden, you didn't kill Dumbledore because you got help.
Yeah. Well, and also, honestly, we're talking about how smart and talented Draco is. The Slytherins around him in his own class don't seem to be the best and the brightest.
Yeah, but he would also have access to all of the Death Eaters who... That
is true. So, I mean, there is that. But it's not like Crabbe and Goyle, who have been watching out for him this entire time under his disguise, exactly as a sounding board for him. Which, maybe that's a detriment to him, too, is... not trusting people a little bit, but...
Also interesting that all of the Death Eaters came with him at this point anyway, because it's not like it was a, like, storm the castle, take down the castle.
Right.
It's just a, like, all right, can we wrap this up and, like, off Dumbledore already? And it's, like, it seems weird to me that when it's a, like, you need to do this, now all of a sudden it's a, like, I need to do this with 4 witnesses!
Yeah. Well... I'm still amazed that we talked about Albus, and I agree with you 100%, Julie, that all of this conversation, whether it's genuine or not, is a stall tactic. That's the pure nature of it. And he's able to maintain such casual conversation in an alarming position and in the weakened state that he is, because we get descriptions of him slowly, like, leaning up against the wall, slowly sliding down the wall. Like, his strength is fading quickly. And he's still trying to maintain this calm control of the events that are happening right now as much as he can. And there are some interesting quotes where Draco's like, "You weren't supposed to be back yet. I thought you were out having a drink." And Dumbledore comes in with such sass and it's such subtle sass, because he doesn't even mean it to be. No one's going to pick up on this joke except for Harry and Albus. Of like, "Well, I certainly did have a drink." Like, I mean...
Also, Dumbledore is so snarky for, like, this whole chapter for someone who, like, is already, like, halfway dead from what he went through and knows what's about to happen.
Yeah. There's bangs and booms and screams happening from below them. And it's alarming, all three, really. All three are a little bit concerned about what's happening below them.
Especially Draco says that one of your lot died. And Harry's like, "Wait, who died? Which person died? Did the Felix, like, wear off already? Is it Ron or Hermione or Ginny or Luna or Neville? Like, is it my fault somebody's dead down there?" Like, you don't know because you're frozen.
He said this is, like, am I responsible for killing another friend? Mm-hmm. And I'm like, that's such a heavy thought to have. But Draco never specifies. And he was like, he does go into... I thought we were going to have a pretty easy run of the castle, but then, members of your side showed up and got in the way, and then...
They do that.
Yes, they do that. I love comments like that.
It's so nonchalant, though. It's just like they do that.
Well, again, it's as much of a stall tactic of I want to keep living as I don't want you to kill. Because I know what happens to you if you do that, and I don't want you to be corrupted in that way.
I was going to say, I don't think it's a stall tactic for Dumbledore to save his own life. I think he's trying to save Draco's soul.
His innocence, yeah.
He's trying to save I think he's trying to save a lot of people at this point in time. I think he is trying to save himself for a little bit longer. He's trying to save Draco, and I think he does have in the back of my head, like, there's all the people that are fighting down below. I don't know who exactly is fighting. I could presume it's the Order and the Death Eaters, but there might be others. Mm-hmm. And I have a whole castle full of students that I need to somehow steer all of this away from. Mm-hmm. It's a lot for him to try to undertake at the moment. So, what's his answer? He tries to make a pitch to Draco. He tries to pitch, "Hey, it's okay. You haven't really done anything that we can't fix. We can't smooth out. Katie's fine. Horace and Ron are fine. I'm good. Like, you haven't done anything.
Hang in there.
You haven't done anything that you can't take back yet. We're good. We can find a way to get you and your mother away from Voldy. Your father's in Azkaban, but we could figure out a way to get him to safety. Like, we can do this, Draco. We can do this.
Can you? Because you didn't protect the Potters from Voldemort, so I can't really trust you to protect the Malfoys."
That is savage. It's not wrong, but it's savage.
I mean, like, I get it. It's like...
We can fake Draco's death. Yeah. We can get your mom.
If Draco responded with that is a mic drop moment. Of
That's
epic
it.
proportion.
We're renaming the series Draco Malfoy for that line.
Oh, that would be an epic mic drop moment.
Because it was just, "I can help you, Draco," and then talks about how he's going to hide his whole family. And it's like, really? Because you gave that same pitch to the Potters of like, "Hey, your kid's in danger. I'll save you." And that didn't work out too well for them. Now did it?
In Draco's state that he's in right now, it's a tempting pitch.
Well, yeah.
It's a tempting pitch, because I don't think you're following Voldy because you are fully down with that indoctrination. I don't think Draco is fully bought into Voldy's whole vibe.
No, it's the legacy of his family that brings him into it.
I think it's fear.
Well, but I think there's also the level of he makes the comment like, everyone thought I'd die by this point, and I haven't. And here I have you at my mercy. I could do this, and I could get everything that's been promised to me, and I could rise in the ranks of Voldemort's Death Eaters.
It's the Slytherin ambition in him growing of hey, wait a second. I might have a chance to set myself apart and maybe not have to do stuff like this anymore and be in maybe a more cushy position.
When makes that comment you're in my mercy.
Yes.
Dumbledore's, no, Draco, it's my mercy, not yours, that matters now.
Which, man, another savage line. You literally have no wand. You are, practically crumpled to the floor, and you're like, nope, it's not your mercy that matters. It's mine.
If you haven't figured out, I'm still fully in control of the situation, even how bad this looks.
And it seems to work. I mean, Harry notices he starts to drop his hand slightly. He got so close, which is what I think Jen has said many times of that redemption. Here's a little moment that makes you think oh, Draco still has good in him.
He's had a few.
Can be, come back to the good side.
I still love the moment with him in the bathroom with Moaning Myrtle clutching the sink, being he's broken a little bit.
Yeah.
And you see that he's an actual human being and not just
emotionally vulnerable.
Yeah. And he's not just this bully villain that doesn't have a soul or something like that. He's an actual human being. But anyway, we get an arrival. We get some Death Eaters entering the astronomy tower after they've separated themselves from the battle below. We get 4. 3 are named. We get Amicus and Electo, who seem to be siblings, and Fenware Greyback, who's got quite a reputation. And then the 4th one is unnamed. So, really, this conversation, there's some back talk between Amicus, Electo, and Albus of just...
Yeah, but I feel anything they say is just oh, shut up. They're so annoying.
Dumbledore's no, these are manners. When he's
I will say, though, I do how Amicus calls Dumbledore Dumby, the same way we call Voldemort Voldy.
That is fair.
It's fun.
That is fair. It is... I think you had this point, that it's kind of weird to think that some of these Death Eaters were students of Dumbledore.
So it's think about it. Dumbledore could have caught one of them making out with someone in a hallway, and now they're hi, I'm gonna kill you today.
Yeah.
Dumbledore probably watched all of the Death Eaters go through puberty.
I remember when your voice cracked in class. That was embarrassing for you.
Can I just say, all previous students, if you're listening to this, please do not come after me and kill me. Thank you very much.
I mean, it's got to be alarming for you as a teacher in the moment, being these kids are going down a path that is highly disturbing. Yeah. And now, as a teacher, seeing what they've become. Elizabeth, you are a teacher, but you teach and you go home. They go to school and they go home. This is a boarding school where you're in the same building as these kids for months. You see them at breakfast, you see them at lunch, you see them at dinner, you see them in classes in between, you see them for detentions on the weekends.
Well, and
you see them all the time.
There's a reason I don't teach at a boarding school. Let me just say.
So you know these kids.
And it's not you're only seeing them for 1, maybe 2 years. You're seeing them for 7.
7 straight years, yeah. Yeah. So, I mean, you know who these people are.
You know their siblings, and with Dumbledore, you've probably also taught their parents, potentially even their grandparents.
Yeah. Amicus and Electo aside, the Greyback stuff is, they actually have an extended conversation, an actual back and forth conversation for a little bit, of Fenware basically saying oh, Dumbledore, pleased to see me. And Dumbledore's can't say that I am. Not really pleased to see you there, bud. Fenware's response to that is disturbing. He licks blood off of his lips. Quote, and this is the actual word that they use to describe this, obscenely. Yes. That's disturbing, just on all of the levels. He doesn't have a great appearance. It's ragged, yellowish nails, yellowish teeth, pointed teeth. He looks somewhere caught in between man and wolfish a little bit. He's a sight to behold. Blood everywhere.
I wonder if part of that is because he's been attacking humans outside of the full moon, which does shock Dumbledore. But I wonder if part of that appearance change is because of that. It also makes me think of, like, Voldemort, how he saw his appearance change with every Horcrux. And it's like this unnatural dark magic, dark act. Does doing dark acts like that change
who you are? Yeah. Well, with the intimidating visage that he is, and him describing how he would personally like to rip out throats of anyone, really, at the castle, doesn't really matter who, and he will go after kids, as we know. Does that scare you? He asks Albus, are you frightened by that? And Albus goes, I'm not really afraid. Disgusted. I'm disgusted, yes, but not really afraid.
He makes that comment to Draco, too. Like, I'm surprised he wanted you here, because his friends are here. And you're talking about ripping out the throats of his potential friends.
And what we learn is Draco, not a huge fan of Fenrir Greyback.
No.
I mean, would you be?
I don't think, but that's the thing. I don't think literally anyone is. I don't think any of the Death Eaters are like, I want to be with that guy.
You know? He's just the one that constantly inserts himself, and no one's going to tell him no because, you know, he will literally rip your throat out, and Voldemort would probably let him.
I imagine he smells.
I mean...
like, really bad. Like, the BO is probably just disgusting.
Well, the body odor would be blood, sweat.
That's what I mean. He's probably really bad.
Yeah, I mean, he's essentially just... And I think this is how... I would assume this is how everybody would view him, but it's like a rabid animal that Voldy just let off a leash.
Yeah.
And was like, go cause chaos and do that. And he loves it, so he's in on it. But everybody else is like, you know, we're not that. We're bad. We're not that dude.
Interesting that he would come specifically to this mission, we'll call it. Because essentially from what we see, the goal is like, get in, kill Dumbledore, get out.
Yeah.
Only fight if someone's fighting you, which is kind of against the Death Eater's MO a little bit. So it seems weird that someone who like specifically would be one to come cause chaos and rack up the body count is who comes with.
I would be surprised that Voldy would allow it, because as much as Voldy is a sociopathic killer, he does have a reverence for the school, number one, and he does have a reverence for magical blood, and there is a whole bunch of it at that school.
Yeah, and it's not like Greyback would know, like,
he wouldn't care.
Hey, you're pure blood, you're not.
He wouldn't care. He
And
would
the
not care.
hierarchy of, like, wizards to werewolves in general. Like, we look down on werewolves more often, so do I really want you going and being on this important mission? You know?
Yeah. Do I want you spilling magical blood at the school that I consider sacred?
Yeah.
Like, I don't think Voldy would even really want him on that.
How were these Death Eaters picked to come on this mission? Was it just like, hey, B Squad's coming out today? Or was it like... Because I'm also imagining Greyback just like, everyone else is going and he's like, there's no way I'm missing this, and just goes.
I could totally see the Caros as being B Squad.
That's what I was going to say. I think this four, and again, we don't know who the fourth one is, but they've been silent up to this point. These four, I think, would be B team, but we still have a battle raging below.
Yeah.
We still have a battle going below, so who knows what that
fair enough.
is containing. But anyway, disagreements break out amongst the four about who should actually kill Albus Dumbledore. They're like, well, Draco, it's your job. It's your job. Are you going to do it? He's not going to do it. I'll do it. No. I'll do it.
There's also a comment Dumbledore makes that I love, where they're like, oh, you're getting old in your age. He's like, yeah, I am getting old, and maybe you will get old too if you're lucky. And they're just like, you threatening me? Is this a threat? What is this, like, nonsense? And it's just like...
What does that even mean? I don't know what that means. These four.
They're not the berated.
No, these are the bumbling idiot Death Eaters.
B Squad is a compliment.
Like, I know we had a whole thing about the Department of Mysteries and, like, talent level.
Don't get me started on that.
These four would be bad. I mean, come on.
They're the secondhand recruits.
What does that mean? What does that mean? Get old. Like,
Are you threatening me while I'm threatening you?
Don't be threatening me while I'm threatening you, threatening me, threatening you. How dare you? It's silly. But
we can add some levity to this chapter. Outside of Dumbledore's snark, it's definitely needed.
It is interesting the tonal shift that we get when the next entrant appears. We get Severus Snape appearing in the astronomy tower. And everything changes. Everything changes. It goes from, just stupid little quibbling over nonsense to suddenly the Death Eaters are like, oh.
Someone from the A-Team is here.
Someone from the A-Team is here. And everybody just silence and they back off. I think the word is cower. They cower in his presence.
Which is also, kind of weird because you see from the side of the Order that everyone's like, I mean, Dumbledore trusts him, so I trust him. But, do I trust him? And so you would think that the Death Eaters would also feel the same of, Voldemort trusts him, so I trust him. But do I trust him? So it seems weird that they would be like, oh, Snape's here, let's back off a little bit.
Well, I don't think these particular, again, going back to the B team, I don't think they have any option other than to be like, oh, well, we're deferring to that guy,
We're deferring to the possible traitor.
You see in one of the earlier chapters, in the Spinner's End chapter, Bellatrix has no qualms about challenging Snape and his legitimacy. Yeah. She goes after him and be like, I don't trust you. I don't believe you. I don't care what he says, which is that's a big statement to make. And so I think it is a little, we're joking about the A-Team, B-Team kind of thing, but
Well, it's another thing Draco reminded Dumbledore about earlier. He was like, Snape is not on your side. He's a double agent. The only reason why he was investigating me all year is because he promised my mom that he's going to protect me. It's not like he was investigating to help you. So having Snape here now is very much for Harry, okay, whose side are you actually on?
Right. So, as Snape enters, and the Death Eaters quiet themselves and back away, it gets very quiet, and Albus, very quietly, very weakly, says, Severus, please. And Snape gazes upon him with a look of revulsion and hatred, which I want to talk about, then raises his wand, says Avada Kedavra, and Albus flies over the battlements behind him.
Mm-hmm. And then falls to the ground below.
Yep.
And that is the end of Albus Dumbledore. Should we have a moment of silence?
There was. But that's how the chapter ends.
Yeah.
I think when this book first dropped and everybody read it right away, I think this was a monumental blow to everyone. I think everybody was surprised. Everybody probably thought that Albus is going to get out of this somehow. Somehow Albus is going to pull something out and he's going to survive and he's going to put them like he did at the Department of Mysteries. Rope them all up and be like, oh, you're all sent to Azkaban.
Or the reason of Dumbledore saying, yes, they do that to the Order because the Order was going to pop out of nowhere.
Right.
I remember the first time reading this, it was July, because I looked it up. July 16th, 2005 was when it came out. And I remember reading this chapter and feeling so engulfed in it that when I raised my eyes from the book and I looked around me, I'm like, it's sunny out, but I feel like I'm surrounded by darkness because this was so devastating to read. It was excruciating.
And the shock factor of it, because when you think of reading all of the earlier books, if you were to place bets before this moment of who would survive to the end, would you put your money on Dumbledore or Harry?
Right.
And I think even with Harry being the main character, you'd be like, Dumbledore. Why would Dumbledore die? He always comes in at the last minute. He always saves the day.
The other part of the shock value is, like we've talked about, this comes very abruptly.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I mean, 2 chapters ago, everything was cool. Everything was fine. It was just, they were complaining.
He was telling him, don't be afraid. We got this.
Ron was breaking up with Lavender. Harry was getting with Ginny. Everything was okay. And then all of a sudden, like, boom, this takes a real quick whiplash-like turn. And now we're without Dumbledore.
Well, and I feel like this chapter is the same way as the book, too. Like, you have this big, drawn-out, like, Draco, you're not going to kill me. It's not going to happen. You're not going to do it. You're not a killer. And then all of a sudden, it's like Snape walks in and it's like, all right, we're done here. Boom.
Mm-hmm.
Yep. And with that, we will go to a tonal shift with Lav Lav and Ron Ron as our break sound.
Who chose that break sound, Nathan?
I don't regret it. It's a great break sound. But we will go to our break, and we will be back with the spoiler section, which stunningly has a lot for us to discuss. We will be right back. Before we get to our break sound, I'd like to acknowledge our friend Andy, who helps us produce our intros and our break sounds. If you want to hear more of Andy's work and like Formula One racing, check out the Outlap F1 podcast. It's your one-stop shop for Formula One news, insights, race previews, and reviews. You can find them wherever you listen to podcasts, and they even have a YouTube page. So check out Andy, Cody, John, James, and Deanna, and join them on the Outlap.
The last thing you want to hear when you need your auto insurance most is,
"Thank you for calling. Please listen to your list of 46 possible service options."
which is why when you choose USAA Auto Insurance, you'll get great service that is easy and reliable. 24/7 online service for claims, access to roadside assistance, and more. All at the touch of a button. Start getting the service you deserve. Get a quote today. Ability to receive a quote depends on membership eligibility. Membership eligibility and product restrictions apply and are subject to change. USAA means United Services Automobile Association and its affiliates, San Antonio, Texas.
Where is he? Where's my 1-1?
All right, so we're back with the spoiler section of Chapter 27, Lightning Struck Tower. A lot happened in this chapter.
Somebody died.
Somebody died. Some guy named Albus Percival Wulfric Brian Dumbledore.
Dan, who's that?
I just got you to laugh about Dumbledore's death.
I wasn't expecting the whole name. I was not laughing when I first read it. I shed so many tears.
Yeah, the
So many tears.
shock and disbelief of it. But I feel like after rereading it, now I'm kind of like, oh, okay.
Well,
I'm not like that. I'm more like, I still feel bad.
Didn't you say you had a reaction?
I did. So backstory for everyone listening. When I was rereading this chapter for recording today, I was in a coffee shop that I'd never been to before and working on my notes. And I did not realize when Dan sent me the chapters that Dumbledore dies in this chapter. So here I am in this coffee shop that's filled and I've never been there. And all of a sudden I'm like, we're really close to the end of the book. And then I'm flipping through the chapter really quick and I'm like, oh, Dumbledore dies here. And like immediately I get a reaction of like my eyes welling up, but it's not even that Dumbledore's dead. I think it's just the like remembering the first time I read the book and how upset and how distraught I am. Because now like once I finished like rereading it, because the reaction was from realizing that that's what this chapter was, not from reading it in the moment. Reading it in the moment, I'm like, yep, he died. I'm not mad about it anymore.
You've gone through a very traumatic experience. You've had...
I'm sorry, I don't have a ton of Dumbledore love anymore after reading book 7.
That's fair, but you've had Dumbledore die at the end of book 6. You had Sirius, who, for all intents and purposes, I know you argue this, but died at the end of book 5. And we all had Cedric Diggory die at the end of book 4, and that crushed us all. It's been a traumatic last 3 books, okay? But we persevere on.
Like reading it, crying like crazy, and thinking the tears were both for Dumbledore and for Harry, but also like the whole wizarding world. I was thinking like, what is this going to mean for book 7? Like we had to wait 2 years to get to book 7. And wonder the entire time, like, is Snape a good guy? Is he a bad guy? Was Dumbledore right to trust him?
The Protector's
was he wrong? Like, everything is...
Well,
everything that we knew to be true has been flipped on all over, and...
The Protector, the shield, is gone.
Well, but also in the 2 years waiting between the books, you're also sitting there going, okay, but he's not dead, right? Like, I know that we just went through a whole funeral and all that, but like, it's Dumbledore. He's not dead.
Do you guys remember all of the hysterical pulling anything out of your hat that you could theories between book 6 and book 7? I mean, there were piles upon piles of fan theories about what could book 7 bring.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I remember one of the more prominent ones.
It wasn't a prolonged camping trip, I'll tell you that much.
I remember maybe it was for book 6, not book 7, but I remember her being like, there's something in Chamber of Secrets that's really important. We're like, what is it? It's like, oh, it's just
Basilisk
a diary.
Fang?
Yeah. Diary. Like, okay.
There's a lot
I guess
in
you could
book
argue
2,
like
but
the sword having the fang venom embedded in it is also a thing, but
there's a lot. But
yeah.
There's a lot, honestly, there's a lot in every one of these books. As we've reread them, we realize just how much is actually there that's important.
Hence the spoiler section.
Hence the spoiler sections. But you mentioned, is Snape a good guy or is he a bad guy? And, I mentioned in our spoiler section of Spinner's End, like, we get so distorted, all of us on this podcast, because we've all read these so many times that now our thoughts about these books are so ingrained that it is what it is, and we read these and we're not as shocked as we are. We're not as emotional as we were the first time reading this, so on and so forth. But that Spinner's End chapter really sets a tone of like, is Snape good or is Snape bad? Where are we at on this? And when this happened, part of the shock is not just Dumbledore dying, it's Snape pulled the trigger. Snape did it.
well, especially since we just learned that Snape was the one who put the knowledge forth from Trelawney's prediction that led to the death. So it was like, okay, here you have the question of, can we trust him? Can we trust him? We see him coming here. We see that revulsion and hatred in his face, and then he kills Dumbledore. Harry has one interpretation of that, and it is, we do not trust Severus Snape.
Key wording. Revulsion and hatred in his face upon looking at Dumbledore.
Etched in the harsh
What are
lines
our
of
interpretations of that?
I think the revulsion and hatred is knowing what he has to do now and not really wanting to do it, but doing it because he knows that's what Dumbledore wants from him.
I completely agree. I think that the revulsion and hatred are completely genuine. I don't think it's an act, because at this point, Dumbledore has essentially turned Snape into public enemy number 1. Like, you are the person that Dumbledore always said should be trusted, and you are the one that turned on him and killed the greatest, most powerful wizard of our time that was beloved by many people. Many people saw him as a protector. And now, between the unbreakable vow and with Dumbledore being like, yep, you got to do it. You have to be the one to do it. And at this point, for Snape, it's, you're making me be this villain. You are making me do this. And now it's the final hour and I have to make my choice, but you've already made it for me. So now you have turned me into the bad guy.
So I take that, but then to a different degree too, of like, when I think he sees Dumbledore, it's almost, instead of looking at Dumbledore and thinking like, you're making me do this, it's, I'm seeing the action that I have to take in killing you, and the action is just revolting to me. I don't want to do it. Plus, I know if I do this, my entire life is going to change. My cover gets removed. The Order will not accept me anymore. I'm going to have to fully be in the dark side, and I will have no one knowing my true intentions until way later.
Yeah.
But you wouldn't even assume that someone would know your true intentions.
Well, at that point, you've committed.
Yeah.
But, so, I'm more in the idea of, similar to Julie, like, you're making me do this. I don't want to do it. I've said I don't want to do it. I've protested doing it. And you're making me do this.
Well, and you're now, to Elizabeth's point, you're now forcing him to fully be a Death Eater. Because there's no going back from that. Not unless you're like, hey, this was great. I just killed Dumbledore. Hey, Order, let me tell you what happened.
Yeah.
Right.
And then you just ruined all
Right.
of the work.
Well, to that point, I think when we talk about Snape and his redemption, and I know that's a hot topic.
Whatever.
I know. That's a hot take topic, but I think when people broach his redemption, I think a lot of people tie it to his love for Lily, and I think the merits to his redemption are Dumbledore forced him to do the hardest job that any one individual has in this entire series. Mm-hmm. And he did it perfectly.
Yeah.
I mean, not even good, not even great, not even excellent. Perfectly.
Which I guess shows how remorseful he was when his actions did lead to Lily's death. Since he comes to Dumbledore, and Dumbledore, when he looked at him, was like revolted by him. It was like, you just did this. Your actions are horrible. He's like, but I didn't want it to happen. I didn't mean this to happen. And he's like, well, you need to now devote the rest of your life to the good side. And we're going to take advantage of your ability to be amongst the Death Eaters and stuff. But you have to fully commit to undoing the damage that you've done by protecting Harry Potter.
But that life that he lives between this very moment and this act through the end of his life in book 7, that's not an easy life.
No,
like, that is a hard life, and he has to do, like, we're talking about the revulsion that he has for doing this act to Dumbledore. Can you imagine the revulsion he has for what goes on at Hogwarts under his watch? Yeah. He is not a great teacher by any means as far as how he treats kids, but he ain't the Carrows.
Right.
Yeah.
The Carrows are a whole other level.
Yeah. Well, and also, like, him doing it quickly, I don't think is like, he really committed. I think it was a, like, if I have to think about this, I won't do it.
Yeah, it's not like he was Bellatrix and trying to torture him to insanity or anything like that.
Yeah.
But let's also remember, to actually pull off this spell, he has to mean it, too. So he has to, like, actually...
Well, he knows Dumbledore needs it. Mm-hmm. And I think that's the factor that really pushes him to be able to do it.
And it's his way of honoring Lily.
Yeah, and he knows his life is on the line, which I think he only made that promise because he knows he already had the conversation with Dumbledore about this.
To all of that, I think, you mentioned the idea of the Severus Please line and all the connotations that could possibly have of Severus, you have to do this because you need to be the one to kill me for the unbreakable vow. You need to be the one to kill me so Draco doesn't suffer. You need to kill me because I'm old. I'm going to die anyway because of this curse from the ring.
And I don't want any of the Death Eaters to be coming at me because who knows what they're going to do to me instead.
Yeah.
Who knows what Greyback's going to do? Because Greyback was like, I'm all about this. I'm going to rip his throat out in the most violent way possible, and that's not how I want to go. He's so weakened by that potion. I mean, he is struggling to even stand up. He's struggling to even be... It's a miracle he's as present as he is in this situation. He's on death's door.
Well, I don't know that the potion is necessarily putting him on death's door. Like, I think he's worn out from it, and the curse from the ring doesn't help. But,
he needs help. Get
some liquid IV. We'll give him.
I don't know about that.
I'm just thinking if the potion truly did make him relive his worst moments possible, and if those worst moments were that duel that led to his sister's death, to have just revisited that in such a vivid way, and then now to be so close to death, you can almost read it as like, just kill me because I need to go to the other side and be with them again.
I think to the potion, it was mentally, emotionally, and physically draining for an already weakened, because again, the curse that he undertook, and he's old. I mean, he really is. It's a combination of things, but he in this scene is not in good shape.
Yeah, but is the Severus Please a pleading for his life, a pleading for Snape to end it? Or is it all an act because he's trying to put on a show?
I think it could be all of the above. It could be it could be an all-encompassing, like, please, let this all be over.
I see it as less of an act and more of a reminder of what you promised to do. So you need to go through with it.
It is a clever line.
It definitely makes your reader think. Pleading is such a strong word choice there of, he doesn't want him to like kill Dumbledore.
It's clever wording in that you read it initially as please help me.
Yeah. Or
like you insert the help me after that.
Yeah, which could also be the case when you look at what we learn in Deathly Hallows about the Hallows, and it would also help you extend your life, because while Dumbledore doesn't have as large of a fear of death as Voldemort does, I do think that it's still there as much as he kind of turns away from the idea of fearing death. But I think it's got to be still there from everything that's happened in his past. Like, death is still the greatest unknown for anyone in the wizarding world or outside of it.
And death will give him the answers about the duel of who was the one who killed Ariana, right? Like, you're going to find out real soon.
Well, he's always struggled with the Hallows pull on him from a very young age.
Yeah.
So that always has been a question for him. But he diverted from that path.
But it's still always a part of him. It's still, especially if he just relived any and all of his, like, worst memories of the past. And with reliving the duel, it was all focused around the Hallows. So that's going to bring that right back up front and center. And there's always going to be the pull to power for anyone, whether you're Dumbledore or, random Hogwarts student whose name's only mentioned once in the books. Like, if there's any type of power, human nature is to follow it. Maybe not to, conquer the world, but whether it's power over your own life or everyone else's, it's still going to have that pull on you.
Mm-hmm. Some deep conversations.
Well, like we said, this is a really important moment, because if by Draco defeating Dumbledore with Expelliarmus, he is now the master of the Elder Wand, which is the reason why Harry is able to become the master of the Elder Wand, because he defeats Draco.
He disarms Draco the same.
Right.
Well, he doesn't disarm him. He, rips the wand out of his hand, I think.
Right. I won that one, I guess. So
the wand's like, magic, brute strength, whatever.
Yeah, so
there's a lot of questionable things about all of the Hallows, but there's some questionable things about how exactly the magic of the Elder Wand passes, especially when the wand itself has either been lost to history or is actually Albus Dumbledore's actual physical wand.
Yeah.
I think the crazy what if that we could put on the top of this, and there's a lot to talk about with Draco, but I think the crazy what if to pull out is if Dumbledore wasn't able to petrify Harry. And Harry's a wild card at the top of the astronomy tower. Because not only can he take out Draco, but I don't think he could stand face to face with several different Death Eaters, but I think he could stand against the Carrows and the fourth one, whoever that is. I think it's Raoul. I'm pretty sure it was Raoul, but
well, I mean, he would not.
Greyback might be a problem.
He would not have the foresight that Dumbledore does of, let's try to prolong this. We can talk Draco out of it. I think he would immediately go to attack.
I'm sorry, he would immediately go to Expelliarmus and summon something. Have we learned nothing?
Summon No, that can't happen.
But I don't think he would let him talk through his plan. I don't think he'd see here is someone who has been threatened to this point.
There would be a
to
point.
Act in this way. I think he'd just be like, "Oh, Draco's doing bad," and just go at it.
I think there'd be a point.
Agree.
I think there'd be a point where Harry follows Dumbledore's orders until something, and something would trigger him, and then
I think
that whole thing would.
That would be the case if it was Harry pre the ending of Goblet of Fire, before we turned into Harry Potter and the Teenage Angst. I think post Cedric's death, Harry would have seen what Draco was doing and would act despite what Dumbledore is saying, especially with Dumbledore in the weakened state. But I think if it was the earlier books, it would have been a lot more of a build-up of Harry being like, Can we get this? Can we do it now? Can we do it now? All right, let's go.
And considering he's had the entire year of suspecting Draco, with more and more and more evidence that he has been
Yes,
branded as a
ignored
Death
about.
Eater.
this is indeed
and
Harry Potter and the
been
obsessive
ignored.
stalking.
Yes.
Yeah, so if now all of the evidence now seems to be coming out of his mouth that, like, yes, I did attack Katie Bell. I am responsible for your best friend's near demise. Like, I am attempting to kill this man who you revere as beyond a father. And if Dumbledore's just been like, just hold on a second, I got this. Be like, no, you don't. You're like on the ground. Let me take care of it now.
I think that would be an interesting what if Harry was not incapacitated.
Yeah.
But
The other what if I think would be interesting, which Jen has talked about repeatedly, if she had done more of that redemption arc for Draco. Because there are those pieces in this chapter and in previous chapters of he is still capable of being redeemed.
problem that Jen points out is we don't never see that.
Right.
We get hinted towards it in the epilogue, but that's a hint
barely.
that we're reading
Yeah,
into.
It's like one single sentence.
Yeah.
Nothing.
It's really not appropriate for the level of, because I think, doesn't J.K. say that like Draco's in her top 5 characters, top 6 characters? She has like 6 characters that she puts above everybody else, and I think Draco is one of those. But you never get that resolution, at least in a satisfying way.
Which is such a shame, because it's like, I mean, with the adults as Death Eaters, it's like you have made the choices to live your life in this way. The thing I love about working with teenagers so much is like they're still being shaped, they're still discovering themselves. So for Draco to have been down this dark path and be like, wait a second, this is what it can do to me, this is what can become of my life. I don't want that. I don't want to be that. And having a redemption arc would add such depth to the character. So I feel like it's a missed opportunity. I agree with Jen.
Same.
Which I know is shocker to you, but
I know.
still.
I definitely did not roll my eyes.
I also concur.
Any other thoughts for the spoiler section?
Makes me mourn not just Dumbledore, but like the loss of his knowledge. And I know his magical abilities are amplified by the Elder Wand, but like the stuff that he could do that Harry has no chance of ever learning.
So wait, I'm going to take this in a way far off tangent here, but I think it might be fun to end the podcast.
I feel like I know where you're going with this.
You just said it's a shame that Dumbledore's knowledge is gone. But is it? Because of the portrait in his office. Has he, since he's known he's going to die, has he been commissioning the portrait of himself to be done so he can, because this is how portraits are done. We've looked this up. Mm-hmm. Portraits are done, and they are done with imprinting that person's being and that person's knowledge upon it.
My question with that, like, because it seems to me like the portrait just appeared when he died. Right,
this portrait would be everywhere, too. I mean, my goodness.
So, I like...
Chocolate frog cards.
Yeah. Is this the portrait that he has been commissioning, knowing that he's going to die, and he's been, like, talking to it or whatever? Or is this just the magic of being the headmaster, that a portrait just appears?
No, I think you still have to... I mean, it does appear. It would appear there right behind, because I assume Dip It would get, like, shoved to the side.
Because I always just
and then
read
his
it
would go
as,
up right
like,
behind.
as part of the magic of being a headmaster of you were in this office, so at your death, it'll pop up. And
I think part of the magic, though, is still you have to, like, impart yourself upon it somehow.
So I wonder if it's, like, all the conversations that you've ever had in the office, all the things that you've ever done within the office, if the office automatically knows to put that into your portrait.
I don't know. I still feel better
Like
if it was, like, a commissioned
room.
thing, and then he, like, was teaching it, for lack of a better phrase.
In reality, you could merge both of those, because Dumbledore's also putting all of his memories into the pensieve, and so when he's going through all of that, all of those memories, I assume, would also be able to transfer into said portrait, and Dumbledore would have the foresight to go, well, I want this knowledge here.
We can get into a lot more of this in Deathly Hallows, and I'm sure we will. But what a resource for Snape. being in the headmaster's office and being able to just
we
talk
see
to
that-
Dumbledore the
we see
entire
that-
time.
We see that in one of his memories where, like, the portrait tells him to go bring Gryffindor's sword and make sure that he puts it in a way where he has to be brave to get it.
Like, what a resource for him to have that nobody would even think about.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So, I don't know.
A resource, but also kind of a curse.
Well, you still have Dumbledore over your shoulder.
Yeah.
But
literally.
But, like, you're the reason that he's a portrait instead of standing there.
Yeah. Do you think the other portraits judge him for it?
1,000%.
Well, I don't know, because I feel like
that was the plan.
They would have witnessed the conversation.
They would have witnessed the conversations of the plan.
So you did what you needed to do. I do not envy that position.
However,
but
that being said, they would be aware of what's happening in the school under his watch, and I do not think the vast majority of them would be down with.
But I also do
that.
think the portrait of Dumbledore would have been like, look, you have to maintain your cover, and these horrible things are happening. Just make sure that, like, they're not dying.
Yeah, but even though the
make sure your
would
kids aren't
know-
dying. That's a low bar.
I know.
That's a low bar.
From
like,
the teacher,
torture.
too.
I know.
Well, I mean, even like when they do eventually go back to Hogwarts and they're in the room of requirement and they're talking about Snape being in charge, they talk about how the Carrows are so horrible, and they say how Snape is kind of more hands off than they expected him to be, given that he was Dumbledore's killer. So they talk about like him kind of like hiding in his office a lot of the time.
Wonder why.
He chose the
Yeah, yeah.
Wonder why. Anyway, anything else? It's almost over. We're getting very, very close to the end, so we will wrap up this episode. It's kind of an important one. So let us know your thoughts by commenting on the episode on Spotify or leaving a comment on Instagram or Twitter at HogwartsAPod. Also, we have the YouTube, which you can also find on by typing in at HogwartsAPod. If you feel so inclined, you could donate financially to the podcast by clicking the Support This Podcast link wherever you're finding the podcast. Thank you for listening, and we'll be back next week with Chapter 28.
Bye, guys.
Thank you for listening to Hogwarts, a podcast. If you like what you've heard, please click the subscribe button on your preferred podcasting app and follow us on Twitter and Instagram at HogwartsAPod.